We got Hayden, pronoun she, her, calling in from Arizona. Would like to talk about my specifically biological backing for about abortion, but also would I be pro-choice? But I think there's a lot more than just the biology to say there. So Hayden, you are on AXP. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing really well. How are you guys?
I'm doing fantastically.
Good,
thank you so much for waiting for so long.
Yeah, I know. I'm like sitting here and I gotta pee, but so I'm glad.
Oh, no.
For like 2 hours, you've been sitting there waiting. I'm so sorry.
It's been a struggle. It's okay. It's okay. It's worth it. First and foremost, I just really want to thank you guys for everything that you do. So you personally helped me in my deconstruction slash not being able to find a good reason that there is a God. So I love how you always say, Forrest, I love how you always say in science, you don't accept the hypothesis, you fail to reject it. And I feel that is how I view religion. Like I'm failing to find a good reason to believe in it. So anyways, so I actually...
And that's not just me saying that. That actually is the rule. That is how you do it.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's just helped me so much. So real quick, grew up super conservative, very, very pro-life. I am now pro-choice. So it started a couple years ago. I work in the funeral industry, and we had a little girl who came into our care who passed away from neglect. And that's when I began to question, like, why is this better? But I officially came across the pro-choice stance because of bodily autonomy. That makes sense to me. I'd hope that I'd have an option to have an abortion if it threatened my life, or if I just didn't want to continue in with it. So anyways, I heard one time you say, Forrest, that you could make an argument for both pro-life and pro-choice, but from a biological standpoint, and just from like a point of like learning, I was super interested in that. So I was really wanting to hear what you have to say from a biological standpoint to like back pro-choice. That makes sense.
Yeah. So I think I might have misspoke. If that's what you heard me say, I might have, what I usually say is that from a biological standpoint, I could make a good argument for life beginning at fertilization, at implantation, at birth. It's fine. It's at a certain time in pregnancy, say a heartbeat, say brain, something, whatever. I could also make the argument, and all that is, at fertilization, you have a new recombination of human DNA, and therefore it's a unique genetic system. Argument against that, I brush out a few dozen of those every time I brush my teeth in the morning, and nobody cries about it. So like, it's fine. Talk about, heartbeats or things like this, that you could make an argument for that as some sort of viability. You could also be more realistic about the fact that, like, at that time, that fetus looks like a wad of snot, and it is not a person. It's what you call a heartbeat is, electrical activity among certain cells. It's not a freaking heart. Just because it's a heartbeat doesn't mean that it's a heart beating, if that makes any sense. I could make the argument that until you're born, you're not your own person, of which, that because kids die during childbirth all the time. Good counter argument to that is that, those kids were still alive, definitely. And I could also make the argument that, like, life never started in the first place for this kid, because life is an unbroken chain going back 4.6 billion years. The sperm was alive, the egg was alive, the zygote that it produced was alive. These are all living things. And so putting any arbitrary delineation on where life starts is kind of silly. And at the end of the day, it's kind of just a fuzzy thing. And we know for sure that a baby is a baby. And we know for sure that a sperm is not a baby and an egg is not a baby. And somewhere in between there's a fucking baby, and we're not sure where, but like it's in there, and we can disagree to do whatever. The argument that I make for being pro-choice and for bodily autonomy and for access to safe and effective and legal abortions is that literally none of those biological arguments matter in the slightest. My thoughts about abortion have zero to do with my being a biologist. So that nothing is in there. I will grant all the way back to the second, like the second you consider having a baby, that baby is now a full person. Like that, all the way as far back as you want, complete, total human rights for that baby. That does not give you the right to live inside someone else's body without their consent. My mother is my biological mother. She actually, she had me in her, and I looked just like this. It's for a long time, and it was horrible for everyone involved. Then she pooped me out because that's how, and she has the same blood type as me. If I need a kidney, I can't go take it from her. If I needed blood right now and I stabbed a needle into her and started using her blood to sustain myself, she is my literal mom who actually gave birth to me, who shares a significant amount of my DNA, who has the same blood type as me. Even if it ended up in me dying, she could pull that tube out of it and be like, you're not taking my shit, dude. You're not taking my blood. I'm not interested. No, you're not allowed to just use my body. And so if you're saying that she could not have done that while she was pregnant with me, then that would mean that I had special rights as a fetus that I don't have as a person. And that's, I think, a silly argument. I'm willing to grant a fetus all the rights of any other person. No other person gets to use somebody else's body for themselves. And so to say that would mean that you have more rights as a baby. And if you are born with a uterus, you suddenly have less rights after being born. But then after you die, at least in this country, I know if you want to be an organ donor, you have to sign up before you die. So if you and I have the same blood type, yeah, so if you're about to die and I'm already dead and you need my heart and I didn't sign up as an organ donor, we're both dying. It's it, which means that a literal corpse has more rights than somebody who happens to have been born with a uterus in this country. And so you would have to say that any anatomical female in our is they have more rights before they're born and more rights after they're born. And while they're alive, they've lost those rights. What the fuck is that? And like that, I think, is a much less tenable position. So like I said, I can make a million arguments from a biological perspective. Not a single one of them changes the fact that nobody should have any more rights than anybody else. Human rights are not an age issue for me. And so I don't think that a baby should be allowed to live inside of a person just because it would result in the baby's death. To not do that, that person still gets to decide what they do with their body. And if it's not murder to stop using your vitality to sustain someone, even if that results in their death. That's very different than actually going and killing a person or like deliberately starving them of food or something like that. You're just not letting them use your body as a house. That's a reasonable thing to say. Anyway, that's everything for me. Emma, I'm sure you have something a lot more concise and compassionate to say that's less ridiculous. Please.
Sure. I mean, I think it's interesting because this conversation has come up when I was on an ACA show before with somebody arguing, a pro-life position, which I'm trying to avoid saying pro-life because I think that is a bit of a contentious term. Forced birth, maybe. But it becomes clear as soon as you boil it down to the specifics, like you said, of just the legal ramifications of abortion rights, it becomes sort of farcical. And the discussion I've had with forced birthers on this subject, like on this show, has basically devolved to, well, would you be comfortable with other people having the right to take your bone marrow? And they've said, no, obviously not. Right. But when it's a person with a uterus and a fetus, then it's okay. And it boils down to ideological, can be religious. A lot of the time you will explain the biological arguments and it won't help. A lot of the time you'll explain the legal ramifications. You can talk about it the way that you talk about, the fact that abortions will likely not actually reduce, just safe and legal and accessible abortions will reduce, and the risks of that. And generally people who are hard on that position will not shift because it is an ideological sort of entrenched thing. Right. So super useful to know. And I'm going to steal some of Forrest's analogies, but it might not be a gold ticket.
Well, and it's definitely like why I was coming from like an education like just like genuinely wanting to learn, because I mean, even like I grew up a creationist, and for the first time in my 27 years of life, I'm learning about evolution through Forrest, and like I'm like, holy cow! So I just feel like there's so much like knowledge out there that's been like kept as a secret from me, for in the name of like a God, that I'm like, holy crap, what else don't I know? So I think that that's definitely why I was calling in. But it's also funny because I was talking to a guy the other day about this, and I realized from a pro-choice like standpoint how frustrating it is talking to a man who is pro-life. Like, I am like, holy crap, like that's really great that you think that, but at the same time, like, what if I was going to die? You still don't think that I have the right for that, to save my own life? And he was saying that, like, well, you know, you caused it because you were you were engaging in like consensual sex and whatnot. And I was like, okay, but like,
showed your filthy ankles to the world.
I know, my gosh, how horrible. But I was like, okay, well, let's say you stabbed me and I'm now bleeding out, and you're the only, you know, you're the only blood type that matches mine. Like, should you then be forced to give me your blood because you caused it? And he's like, well, no, like that. And I was like, well, then that's exactly what I'm saying. And like, kind of going off of what you were talking about, Forrest, is that it's like, it's still a right to bodily autonomy. And that ultimately was the catalyst for making me 1,000% pro-choice, from not even like it having to be, because I was kind of wavering, like, okay, if someone's poor, then sure. If someone's, you know, gonna die, then like maybe, or rape, whatever. But now I'm at the point where it's like, no, absolutely. I don't think that a woman should have to give a reason to make that choice. So, and also, I know we're running out of time. I just wanted to tell you guys too, I think it's funny that Christians use the Bible to say that it's pro-life, but I would encourage both of you to read Numbers 5, where it talks about the adulterous wife. Do you know about this?
Yeah, if you suspect your wife has cheated on you, you do this magic ritual where you put dirt in a glass, and if she had been adulterous, she'll have an abortion. And it's like, dude, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah.
I'm like, how can you say that the Bible is pro-life when there's literally that directed from God to say, like, to allow an abortion? I'm just like, I can't. Okay. So anyways, I didn't know if you guys know about that or not, but that blew my mind.
And I'm pretty sure the Bible also says that life starts when you have your first breath as well, outside of the womb. So like, you know, this whole babies are, you know,
it does. And there's also a part, I can't remember which book it's in, where it very clearly equates if a woman is attacked and her unborn child dies, the equivalent punishment is not equivalent to murder, because that's not a person. There's quite a lot of evidence in the Bible that is pro-choice, essentially.
And that's one of the reasons why, fun fact, this was never like a Christian thing for most of America's, for most of the history of this debate. Catholics especially were very pro-choice, and then through lobbying and social and political pressure, it became a Christian argument to be pro-life, and it's so silly. Anyway, yeah, everything you're saying makes sense, and I'm really happy for it. We do have kind of a hard cutoff, so we've got to move on. But thank you so much, Hayden. I really appreciate you calling. And
thank you, Hayden.
Yeah, thanks so much for waiting for so long.
Guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Please go pee.
Yeah,
All right.
F's in the chat for Hayden's bladder.